Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlord is one of the most unique sandbox RPGs out there, but it can also be one of the most frustrating. It's a game where you can rise from a nobody with a handful of recruits to leading massive armies and ruling your own kingdom, but the endgame can feel a bit repetitive. So if you're wondering whether it's actually worth your time, this video will help you decide. I'll give you a 60-second, too long didn't read breakdown of what the game actually is, then I'll show you the detail of what it really feels like to play, from scrapping with bandits to commanding full-scale sieges, and then finish with who this game is really for. So, let's get pillaging. At its core, Bannerlord is a sandbox where you build a warband, make money, and eventually try to take over the map. You start by moving your character between towns, leading a few men to take on bandits to generate money, food, and equipment. Essentially living from day to day while upgrading your character and competing in tournaments to make ends meet. Eventually, you'll have enough money and food to be able to think about the future. Investing in trade to generate passive income, growing your warband and signing up as a mercenary, forging legendary items before getting married and having kids to expand your clan, perhaps owning your first fiefdom. Although you can live out your days as a bloodthirsty mercenary, you could end up ruling your own kingdom with multiple settlements, opening up the diplomatic and fiefdom management systems while commanding troops and issuing orders in massive siege battles. So if you like the sound of a medieval sandbox with a ton of wide systems that aren't all that deep, where you can chase down bandits, rule an empire, or simply smash people in the face with a spiked mace, Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlord might be your cup of tea. You might be thinking, that sounds like Crusader Kings 3 with some third-person action, and you wouldn't be wrong, but let's break down what Bannerlord is actually like to play, because this is one of those games where you have so much freedom, but what you do changes massively over time. We'll break this down into the early, mid, and late game, because they are distinct, and almost feel like three different games stitched together. When you first drop into Bannerlord, you're basically a nobody with a handful of troops and barely a loincloth to your name. And although there is first and third-person interaction, the vast majority of the game is played via the top-down, overworld map, with a sort of story for newcomers to follow that's entirely optional. The early game is all about survival and momentum, and this is where a lot of players either get hooked or decide it's not for them. You start by building a small party, recruiting basic troops from villages and trying to keep them alive and faithful. That sounds simple, but no. Straight away, you're juggling the daily wages and food requirements of your troops. If you run out of money or food, your troops will leave, and that's before their risk of death that comes from a spear to the head. So even just existing has a cost, and money making early on is like scraping the bottom of a nasty barrel, which sounds stressful, because it is, but that constant pressure is also what makes the early game so addictive. A mini-game unto itself, almost. You're mostly hunting down small groups of bandits, selling their loot, and occasionally taking prisoners to ransom off. You can complete minor quests for random people, and also dip into basic trading, attempting to buy cheap goods in one town and selling them elsewhere for a profit, which can go horribly wrong. There are a lot of ways to make money, but none of them are especially reliable early on, which keeps you constantly on edge. Combat at this stage is small scale, but very hands-on, as you can do much of the dirty work yourself, and you'll want to level up your character's skills. You're not just watching, you're fighting in real time, swinging weapons, riding horses, all while issuing basic commands to your troops like charge, shield wall, or follow me. It's chaotic, and a bit janky at times, but when it finally clicks, this is easily one of the most satisfying parts of the entire game. Then there's one thing that can completely change your early game. Tournaments, which are actually a big deal early on as they're one of the fastest ways to earn money, gear, and renown if you can win them consistently, which takes some practice. At this early stage, the gameplay loop is simple, but takes time to learn. You gallop around a living, breathing map, fighting, trading, and recruiting, while the AI directs a very busy and convincing medieval land around you, with constant battles and trading taking place, whether you join in or not. But this stage of the game works mostly because you're constantly on the edge of losing everything. But once you finally stabilize, with some coin in your pocket and plenty of food, that's when the game starts to open up. As you enter the mid-game, you're really starting to benefit from your character's progression. Your character levels up by doing things like combat, trading, and leadership. Although you can do a bit of everything, each character in each playthrough tends to lean into something specific, especially for those who like to roleplay their characters, which this game is fantastic for. At the same time, you start to recruit specific companions, basically named characters you can hire and assign roles to, like scouting or healing, which makes your party far more efficient and resilient. Your economy also becomes more structured. Instead of just scraping by, you can invest in workshops for passive income, or fund caravans that travel the map, trading automatically. So suddenly, money isn't a constant worry. This is also where faction interactions become more impactful. You can sign on as a mercenary for a kingdom, getting paid to fight in their wars without fully committing. It's a great way to experience large-scale battles without the full responsibility of the politics behind them. Renown becomes more important too, as it increases your clan tier, which directly increases how many troops you can command and how influential you are in the world. Combat also evolves as battles get much bigger, tactics matter more, and you start thinking in terms of formations like shield walls, cavalry flanks, and archer positioning. It's increasingly less about your individual skill and more about how you manage your army. The mid-game is where everything starts to connect. You've got adequate money coming in, you can take part in bigger, more meaningful battles, and there's a general sense that you're building towards something even bigger that will have a wider impact on the continent. Eventually, you move into the late game, which is where Bannerlord becomes a full sandbox strategy game, but it's also where it starts to lose some players. You can choose to become a vassal of a kingdom or start your own. Either way, you'll begin controlling fiefs, made up of towns, castles, and villages, which generate income, but also come with responsibilities. Managing settlements becomes a game in itself, where you have to upgrade buildings, maintain loyalty to prevent rebellions, and trying to keep prosperity high. And if you neglect these systems, things fall apart quickly. Warfare also scales up massively. You're no longer just fighting battles, you're leading armies, potentially huge graphics card melting armies, as you take part in full sieges with siege engines and multi-phase assaults, which definitely are epic, but the AI's odd pathfinding can be frustrating. There's also a political layer where kingdom decisions are voted on using influence, things like declaring war, making peace, or assigning fiefs, but be prepared for the AI's approach to diplomacy to feel unpredictable or downright nonsensical at times. Like most systems in Bannerlord, diplomacy is fairly simple, but still important, because wars start and end dynamically, and the balance of power shifts constantly. On the personal side, you can get married, form alliances, and have children who eventually become part of your clan. Your clan itself becomes a small organization, with multiple parties led by companions or family members operating across the map. At its peak, the game becomes this huge living sandbox where you're managing armies, territory, and politics all at once. The breadth of systems is genuinely impressive, but they can also start to feel a bit repetitive, as the late game often becomes a grind, with endless wars with little variation, and once you become strong, you basically steamroll everything. So that's what Bannerlord is, but whether it's worth your time comes down to a few key things. Initially, this game can be frustrating to learn. Consistently hitting enemies by swinging your weapon takes time, and so does learning how to earn enough money to simply tread water. But once you get over that initial learning curve, the game opens up with a much easier rate of learning. This game can easily swallow up hours and days of your life, but it is genuinely easy to play in small stints, one battle at a time, if spare time comes at a premium for you. Multiplayer is certainly an option in this game, both with and against your friends, but it's worth noting that the single-player campaign is the main reason most players play this game. The game has one DLC, War Sales, which released in 2025, to mixed reviews. It adds a completely new element to the game, naval combat, which is a cool idea and, at first, rather epic. However, the reality is that after a while, it gets a bit samey, and ultimately is nice to have if you enjoy the base game, but is not something for potential new players to get excited about. Bottom line, don't buy the DLC along with the base game. Play the base game first, and if you're still having fun after 100 hours, then sure, War Sales might be worth the investment. Bannerlord has an insane number of mods. Many are focused on deepening the existing systems of the base game, such as diplomacy and kingdom management, as many players feel these are too shallow in the base game, and the mods fix an otherwise underwhelming experience. And there are also the obligatory total conversion mods for Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, and Warhammer. You literally don't need to ever worry about longevity with this game, because the mods have you covered. As the base game released in 2022, it is on sale with deep discounts on average every 2 months. Please never pay full price, as you don't have to wait long to get a 50% discount. If you're not sure whether to take the plunge, the reality is that now is the perfect time to pick up this game, when it's next on sale. So with all that said, is Mount and Blade 2 Bannerlord right for you today? As always, it depends what you enjoy. First off, if you enjoy medieval grand strategy games such as Crusader Kings 3, Bannerlords is a tempting proposition. The underlying strategy game systems, such as Kingdom Management, are not as deep as a 4X game, which may be a deal breaker for you, but when combined with the ability to actually take part in the huge battles, that's a potent combination. Whether that lack of depth should put you off really comes down to how enticing you find the option of commanding and taking part in large battles. But with that said, the mods really do flesh out those strategy game systems. If you're a casual gamer that enjoys all things medieval, then Bannerlord basically gives you a little bit of everything. The initial learning curve will frustrate casual players, but after some perseverance, the game really opens up, and I've created an up-to-date new player guide to help you get started, which I'll link in the description below. I know, sorry, shameless plug. If you're looking for a Kingdom Come Deliverance style epic medieval story, this game simply isn't for you. The NPCs that you speak to are very samey, look like something from Oblivion, and there's basically no story. But if you really enjoy role-playing a character in an open sandbox, then Bannerlord is absolutely perfect. You can be a mercenary, a king, a trader, a smith. You can be a million things while the world continues to evolve around you. So in that respect, the Bannerlord Sandbox is the perfect medieval role-playing game. So is Mount and Blade 2 Bannerlord worth it? Well, if you're looking for a sandbox where you can carve your own story, from chasing down bandits with a handful of recruits to commanding massive armies and ruling your own kingdom, then yes, there's really nothing else quite like it. But if you're still not convinced about the late game, the grind, or whether the systems have enough depth to hold your attention, just drop a comment below. I'm always around to help you figure out if this is actually your kind of game. If this breakdown helps you decide one way or the other, consider leaving a like, as it really helps the channel reach more players who might be staring at Bannerlord and wondering if it's worth the time. And if you're new here, welcome to Twiglets 2. This channel is all about strategy games and sandbox experiences, whether that's large-scale warfare, deep management systems, or games that let you completely lose yourself in the mechanics. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.